wanted to talk about the pros and the cons of working for a startup or scale up, particularly if you're a finance person. So I found working for a startup or scale up, it's quite an exciting business to work with. I've worked with the largest companies in the world, such as Amazon, and then I've worked for many, many, many startups and scale ups. And personally, I do prefer the startups. I've actually written a book on it and how to become a CFO in a startup or scale up. And today I really want to look at the pros and the cons. My name's Alysha Randall. I'm a fractional CFO, and I also run Financial Leadership Foundations, where we train new and aspiring CFOs within startups. So if that sounds like you, then please hit subscribe. I do a weekly post. So as I said, I have worked for startups and scale ups since 2006, so quite a long time, and I'll probably spend the rest of my career in this space. So if you're deciding whether to move or even stay in this industry, it really does depend on what you value in your employer, your personality, your character, and your working style. So if we take a step back and look at the pros and cons, so you can decide whether working for a startup or scale up is good for you if you're already in this industry, and potentially if you're unhappy, it might just be your role in your current company rather than the industry as a whole. Or you're looking to move into this industry, whether that's from a large corporate, from banking, or from an audit firm, then this is probably good for you. This is a good summary. So here are some potential pros and cons of working for a startup and something you may want to consider. The pro that I love, and this is particularly as a finance leader, I think this is a really big one for me, is that you can make a really big impact. So you have much more opportunities, much more responsibilities. You can really contribute to these important decisions, the shape of the business, the direction of the business. So having worked for a large corporation before, I really know for me personally that this is a huge pro. I like making decisions. I like making an impact. I like to see how I can help a business. But when I was working for a large corporation, I really did, like that prior cartoon, I really did feel like I was just part of the wheel, and I wasn't sure how much my work moved the needle at all. And it probably didn't, to be perfectly honest. I'm just part of a really big machine, and I don't know how much the work that I did contributed to the success of the business, and probably not much at all. But when you're working for a startup or scale up, because they are small, you can really see how much your impact can do. So whether it's you identifying a trend that can be utilized, it's either an opportunity or a risk that can be mitigated against, or you're helping people make the right commercial decisions, or you're setting the strategy as you would be for a CFO, you're helping with the direction of the business. You really are directly making change. And, as a finance leader, that's really interesting, and it gives you a sense of purpose within the business. There are lots of learning opportunities, but I will caveat that the learning opportunities are quite different, say, than the learning opportunities you would have in a corporation. So if you're working for a large corporation, or especially if you're working for an audit firm, you would find that the learning opportunities there are very structured. They have L&D departments. They probably have programs and courses that you can enroll in and be part of. The learning opportunity within a startup or scale up is much more pragmatic, and it's usually sink or swim. So you will be learning new things quickly, and you'll have to develop quickly and professionally. So if you want to go from a finance manager to a financial controller, or a financial controller to a finance director, there is usually a very fast road to getting to that next level, particularly if you're working for a startup or scale up that's growing quickly. If you adopt the right mindset, if you have a really great mentor in the background, or you use a support network such as what we offer with Financial Leadership Fundamentals, both the book and the course, then using that you can help support you growing quickly with the company. So perfect example is me personally. I worked for a company called Love Film that was eventually acquired by Amazon. I started there as a financial controller, and within 3 years, I was director of finance and reporting. And then another 2 years, I had a 10-person business intelligence team reporting into me, as well as the group finance team and 3 other regional finance teams. And that is all within 5 years. So it's quite quickly you can grow and learn, but you don't have a framework supporting you. So you do need to look for external support, such as a mentor or such as FLF. Another benefit is equity. So most startups or scale-ups will offer equity or stock options to employees, either unapproved options, or in the UK we have an EMI scheme. So this can be quite valuable and benefit if the company is successful. So it doesn't always work out that way, but it often does. So if you're working for a startup that you really believe in, you have, really believe in the founder and the leadership team, and you work there for quite a number of years, and then they manage to get an exit. So whether they are acquired, like Love Film was by Amazon, or you do an IPO and list on the stock exchange, like Funding Circle did with another company I work for, then obviously you get to cash in those options and you have a pretty good bonus day. So as I said, I've personally benefited from this in both startups. It's obviously not guaranteed, but it is the potential of quite a big bonus, and especially if you're one of the first employees. There's also quite a dynamic workplace and culture. So working for a startup business is quite exciting. It's quite dynamic. You'll probably work with a small team of really passionate and dedicated people, and you're all working towards a common goal. So I personally have built really strong relationships with ex-colleagues. I am in touch with a lot of them. We sometimes don't speak for a couple of years and then reach out again because we work together, and we know that they may have a skill set that I need, or vice versa. But you also really get to know the whole company, not just your own department. So sometimes that early stage, it may feel like a family, but as a startup grows and grows and grows, it's always changing. But the culture is a lot more casual. It's a lot more friendly. It's much more flexible, hybrid working and working hours. Working from home was very common, even pre-COVID. It was very common for people to do at least 1 day a week working from home. And any companies that I know are testing out the 4-day week, as opposed to a 5-day week, they're all startups. So they really do want to retain quality staff, and because they're not large corporations and can't offer any other benefits, then startups will give you benefits that are different to just pure salaries, such as equity, hybrid working, additional kind of flexible working hours, these kind of things. So they really do want to create an environment where you will stick around. The cons. So one of the cons that we can't just put our head in the sand is uncertainty. Startups and scale-ups growing these kind of businesses are risky. So there's always a chance that the company could fail, they don't achieve market fit, and unfortunately sometimes they fall over. So either they have to streamline the business and do a bunch of redundancies, or they fail. So it is common for a business to fail within 3 years, but it is worth saying that larger businesses aren't immune. You just have to open up a newspaper or jump online and read about the redundancies that large businesses and banks are doing for the last 3 years, or every year even. So even though it is saying that working for a startup, there is an element of uncertainty, redundancies are very common practice in large business. And particularly now, as we're moving into AI, businesses are replacing human resources with technology. So it isn't something that you can avoid if you decide to work for a large company. Long hours. So startups and scale ups do often require long hours and a high level of commitment. So this may be challenging for you if you're looking for a work-life balance. I will say, however, again, you're not immune to this from a large corporation. So having worked for Amazon before, you do often do long hours as well. I would say for startups, that's also true. So it may be more common in departments outside finance because finance do work hard. So it may not be a huge negative compared to, say, your banking or audit role. It may be the same. But I will say, though, at a lead up to a fundraise or an exit, you will be doing quite a lot of hours. So there are late nights, and you do need to take that into consideration. If you want just a 9 to 5 role, a startup is then not for you. There are also some limited resources. So startups do operate on a tight budget. So this can mean limited resource for a few things, such as benefits, training and development, as I have already mentioned. This is a main reason why I create online courses, is because startup people don't have access to an L&D department. But it's also with building a team. So if you're, say, a finance director of an early stage startup, you are probably going to have to do such tasks that a financial controller would normally do, or an FP&A manager would also do. You may also find that you're doing some HR work, some legal work, office administration management. So people do have to roll up their sleeves and get their hands dirty. If that's not something you're interested in, then again, a startup may be not for you. But if you enjoy having that breadth of different roles, different responsibilities, and you're happy to get your hands dirty, then this is perfect for you. And then the final con is the lack of structure. So startups and scale-ups are often operate in quite a flat organizational structure. So there may not be a clear path for career advancement and decision-making processes. This may not necessarily affect finances much, but it certainly will affect operations and sometimes also sales. So startups can be very founder-led, and a leadership team does take a little while to be established. The early stage startup, you're not going to have a huge leadership team. It may be, as I said, very founder-led. However, as the business grows, there does become a little bit of growing pain. So when it goes from startup to scale up, the culture will need to shift. You'll need to bring in a leadership team. Again, if you're a financial controller, head of finance, you may be quite keen then to move into that finance leadership role. So there is an element of moving from a small startup that's very flat to getting a little bit of structure in place. I've seen that a few times. I find it interesting because I know what a large company looks like, so I know what you're aiming for, but it can take a little bit, and not everybody loves that change, but I personally do. But again, if you need structure and you need things to be well established before you start a company, you may want to start at a scale up level rather than a startup. Overall, I find working for a startup or scale up a really good opportunity for personal and professional growth. So just have a think about the potential risks and challenges before you make a decision of whether this industry is right for you, whether it's staying within a startup and scale up and potentially moving to another company, or it's moving into this industry. It is quite different. The culture is different. The challenges are different to a large entity. So if that sounds like it's a good fit for you, then jump in. But I have personally hired, say, somebody straight from audit into a group financial controller role. They either love it or they hate it. So it is a bit of Marmite or Vegemite, as we say in Australia. So have a think about it. I personally love it. I'll also always be pro startup. It suits me. It suits the fact that I love putting change in quickly. I enjoy making decisions quickly. I enjoy being responsible for lots of different things. So it suits me, but you just need to decide whether it suits you personally. So hopefully you found that interesting. Do click on subscribe because I do a video every week, and I'll see you then.